All right, I think we're good to go. All yours, Frank.
I'd like to call the September 24th, 2020 Planning Board meeting to order. Ms. Tanya, what do you have for us tonight?
We have a very brief agenda tonight. We're working on doing the land development plan for the county. Y'all know we started that at the end of last year. So we have done some public involvement, some virtual public involvement since COVID. And then we did a meeting out in Pleasant Grove this weekend. Not a great turnout, but we were trying to make sure anybody that didn't do virtual were able to meet us in person and see some things. We will be in Eli Whitney on Monday night from, I believe it's 5 to 7, and welcoming anybody who wants to come in person to see us. We're following state guidelines with masks and limited people in a building. And we have signups online to try to keep people, not too many people from being there at one time. Where we're at with the plan is we've gotten a lot of input. We've done online surveys. We've worked with our steering committee through 4 meetings and what direction to take the county and kind of get some feedback from them. We are beginning the draft of the ordinance, and hopefully we'll have that ready in the next couple of weeks for review. Tonight, what we want to do is kind of show the planning board what we've gotten, where we've been, where we're at, what's left to do, and what we've gotten from everything, all the input that we've put out and gotten from people, because this truly is a public input driven plan. We're taking our surveys, we're taking people's comments and putting them into the plan so that this is driven by Alamance County, not by staff, not by a consultant, but truly by what people want to see in the county. So we want to get this to you all tonight. Jake will do a presentation and kind of take you through a lot of what I just talked about. What we want from you all is some real good input on this is a good idea, we think you're going in the right direction, or we want you to focus a little more in a different area. We just want some guidance on this is good and we're going down the right path, or we want y'all to go a little bit different direction. So with that said, y'all ask questions. Jake's going to get started on the presentation, and y'all can ask during, after, or whatever you're comfortable with.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get going. I want to talk a little bit about just the project, the scope of it, a schedule, and give you an update on kind of public outreach and what we're hearing from folks, and then get into the draft plan a little bit and talk about recommendations, countywide recommendations, and also we have some recommendations that are really related to the southwest area of the county, including snow camp, and talk a little bit about next steps. So the land development plan, the purpose of this plan is really meant to function as the county's comprehensive plan. So it's a guiding policy document. It is policy. It's not regulatory. It's not an ordinance per se. So Tanya, when you said ordinance, but you really meant plan. This is kind of the comprehensive plan for the county, but it could result in changes to ordinance down the line. We want to promote the health, safety, and welfare of Alamance County citizens. We want to guide and manage growth and change, and strengthen the communities in the county when we can, protect property values and investments, and maintain, but also try to improve the quality of life for residents and businesses. The schedule, we started this in the fall of last year, and you never really know how things are going to shape up. So it's exciting to be where we are, and we have draft recommendations, and we're working on putting it all together in a plan document that'll be ready for public review beginning October 9th. And then once that goes, we have a public review period, and also review period by the planning board. And we're looking to move towards adoption in November if all goes well. So a couple of things that we have in the plan is there's a lot of background information in terms of what's happening in the county. And you all kind of know what's going on and why we're doing this to begin with, but Alamance County is experiencing quite a bit of growth. That's one of the main things, 30% growth since 2000. What does that really look like? A lot of that growth is in in the towns in the county, but quite a bit of it is in the county as well. Over this period of time, just in the county jurisdiction, probably the growth is probably around 11 or 12,000 people, 6,000 new homes in the county jurisdiction at this in that time period. So there's been a lot of change even in the county. And what we are is a really rural county, but it's experiencing change. The flip side of that growth is agriculture has kind of taken a hit. 17,000 acres of agricultural land lost over the last 15 years. So that's a concern, and one that we've heard a lot about. And so some of the recommendations are really geared towards protecting agriculture. Community engagement. It's been tough, but we've tried to maintain momentum even through the winter and the spring and even through the early summer and the pandemic, and I think we've done a good job of it, pretty good job. We're still trying to do some things to get more involvement. We've had some stakeholder meetings, we've had a community summit, and we also have meetings planned for September, October. So we've had, like Tanya mentioned, we had the meeting in Pleasant Grove. We have one on Monday, and we have a virtual meeting planned as well. Digital tools, we've had 2 virtual workshops. We've had a project website, email, surveys with pretty good responses actually across the county. And on also social media, we're trying to get the word out there, and we have an email list and making phone calls and trying to get folks involved and aware of what's going on. The community summit was pretty interesting. We had this in the early spring and just talked about what are some of the big things that are happening in the county and from an economic development perspective and from a growth perspective and concerns. And one thing is the overlooked value of agriculture. We heard about that, and we really need to be careful about losing that. Leveraging the infrastructure in towns and ETJs. So a lot of the economic development that we have seen and we will see is inside the towns and also the ETJs, their planning areas. I forget the statistic, but we have it on a public meeting board that's online, but over 90% of all non-residential land uses are within those ETJs and towns. And we think that's likely to continue. Importance of edges, so keeping an eye on the edges of towns and making sure that there's a distinction between them, but also allowing for some growth where it makes sense. There's been a mix of housing types that came in the county. There's a lot of towns that are concerned over the growth in multifamily and that sort of thing. Will residential pay for itself was a big question. Concern over low quality residential growth taking the place of agriculture, which is good for our tax base and good for our economy. But what is it being replaced with, and some concern over that, and making sure we have good development standards and growth areas. So those are some of the themes that came out of that and kind of guided our efforts. Moving forward, we're in 2.5 of reopening. So any meetings we have to comply with those recommendations. The in-person meeting that we had and the one coming up next week, we have spacing of activities and everybody wears masks, and we have a limited number of participants. So there's RSVP so that we make sure that there's only 25 people in the meeting at any time, so that we can have spacing and that sort of thing. Again, Pleasant Grove, we had that. Eli Whitney is upcoming. Virtual online meeting will be on October 6th. And that's going to be a Zoom meeting, so people can submit their questions via chat. And then the draft plan is coming soon on the heels. So that's kind of looking forward. What we heard, what do people like about the county? Farmland and rural character, access to parks and trails, and and lakes and natural feature and country living. Cost of living is also important to folks. So these are the things that we want to remain true even in 10 years or 20 years. So that's what we're trying to protect. Concerns, growth and development is a concern, roads and traffic, lack of sidewalks, commercial preferences. We asked what do we need to encourage more of and less and discourage in the county. So encourage more small scale retail or businesses, reuse, redevelopment. There's some support for office uses and business parks and industrial and that sort of thing in the right places. There's kind of a preference to discourage large scale retail, at least in the county jurisdiction, and then also a lot of concern over mining and resource extraction that I'm sure you're aware of. Policy, we asked, do you think that additional measures need to be put in place to manage growth and or higher impact development? And 79% of residents said they do support additional measures to manage growth or high impact uses. So, and that's just the county residents. That doesn't include folks that we got in the ETJ. We asked about residential development. What kinds of residential development do you think are appropriate in the county, and should we be encouraging in the county? Large scale conventional subdivisions weren't very popular. 68% do not support that kind of use, and that's really a lot of what we're getting in the county. We don't really have any. We have some basic subdivision regulations, but other than that, we don't really have anything preventing that. So that's largely what we're getting, even though a lot of people don't support that. We asked about conservation design, which is where you preserve more open space, and there's support for that. And there's a lot of support for large lot subdivisions and a lot of support for farmhouse clusters. So these are small scale subdivisions with lower overall density, but some flexibility to allow different designs and small lots if you preserve open space. So we're, in short, some of the recommendations will be about discouraging large scale conventional subdivisions and encouraging some of this other stuff where it's appropriate. Land use scenarios. One thing that we did was we developed a number of different land use scenarios, and there's a lot more information on the land use scenarios on the website. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but we had a business as usual scenario, which is basically like current regulations. And we're not really going to change anything. And here's there were some results of that, and then some potential impacts. We do require larger lots in the watersheds, critical and protected watersheds. Other than that, you can have pretty small lots. Your current subdivision regulation allows lots as small as 8,000 square foot if they have the proper infrastructure. And then you're probably going to get, if we don't do anything, a lot of strip commercial development along major roadways as well. And then we talked about a managed growth scenario, which was encouraging some new residential near towns and reducing some development pressure in some environmentally sensitive areas. And then we had an agricultural and rural character scenario, which is really prioritizing the protection of agricultural and rural character and reducing development pressure, and especially in prime farmlands. And then we asked people what they like and why. So the scenario preference, agricultural and rural character scenario, really got the most votes. And then there was a fair amount for the managed growth scenario. Not many people think the business as usual scenario is what we want to do. We also asked, what kinds of residential development policies do you really want the county to take a stance on? Encouraging a lot less residential development in the county and reducing conflicts with agriculture was really the big takeaway. And then treating some of the old mill villages and some other areas a little bit differently. So that's kind of the preference there on commercial development. Preserving the character and function of these crossroads communities and mill villages, and regulating the location of commercial development was something that was preferred. We asked about high impact development and economic development. there's a big preference of restricting high impact development in agricultural areas. And then also some support for strengthening restrictions in environmentally sensitive areas, and also reserving some areas for economic development was important to some folks. We asked those same questions in the Southwest to get a sense, and is there a difference between what the county wants and what the snow camp area wants. And there was an even bigger preference for the agricultural and rural character scenario down there. Some of the things that they said in the Southwest about why. We asked people, what scenario do you like? And then also, why do you support that scenario? And these are some quotes about why they supported these. We also asked, those same questions about residential. What should residential policy look like in the Southwest and the snow camp area? There was even a bigger preference for encouraging a lot less residential development in that area. And then we asked about the high impact uses, and there was that preference for restricting high impact development in agricultural areas. So with that kind of being said, again, more information on the website about all that, but kind of moving into recommendations. One of the big things we're going to try to do is protection of farmland and rural character, and then there's also some other things that we're going to do based on people's preferences, and discouraging mining or resource extraction in some areas, reuse and redevelopment of existing sites, small scale commercial in key locations, and then also some other economic development in some key locations. So what we have is a future land use map. This map is really meant to guide growth and development moving forward in the county. And a couple of the highlights, it focuses growth within and near municipalities. So the yellow and orange areas are the more intense or more traditional residential areas that we would encourage residential development. And then it also defines some opportunities for commercial and employment uses. So those are the kind of the red, the pink, and the purple areas. And then the policies in the plan kind of support that, and then also protection of rural character in less developed areas. So the light green areas are kind of rural residential areas, and then agricultural areas are in the dark green areas. And really it's about decreasing development pressure and potential impacts in those areas. So this is kind of a breakdown of the different colors. We have a municipal growth area and the suburban transition area that kind of we would support, new residential in, allowing some residential and rural residential and agricultural areas, but really trying to decrease the density of that residential and be more sensitive to existing property owners and agricultural uses. And then also making some places where we do want to encourage some non-residential development and commercial development. So your current regulations, just to kind of give you a depiction of what we're talking about here. Your current regulations, you can have 1 to 2 to 3, even up to 4 dwellings per acre if you have the right conditions and right soils and or water access, that sort of thing. There's really no open space requirement. There's a lot of concern about impacts to farms and water quality and views and that sort of thing. So, one thing we could do is just either through updating subdivision regulations or implementing some sort of zoning, you could improve the design of residential. So this is kind of a pretty low bar that we could do this through different ways, but we would want to encourage a little bit of open space preservation and some key features preserved, additional access points and that sort of thing to get better residential development. And this what could look like in that suburban transition area. In the rural residential area, we would want to have even less development, less overall new homes. And we'd also like it to be designed in a way that reduces the impact on adjacent agricultural and views and that sort of thing. And then in the agricultural area, we really want to have a lot less residential development. So this would be something where we really want to have a lot less pressure, less development pressure in this area to keep property values low, to keep agricultural operations in operation. But you could increase the size of lots. So these are larger lots, or you could allow a rural cluster option where you have a certain number of units if you have a certain minimum lot size, and you have some flexibility in how those individual lots are designed. But overall, we want to keep the density a lot lower than is currently allowed. And that would allow for the preservation of key features and reduced impact across the board, while providing some flexibility and balancing property rights too. This is something that we know that there's some folks that own land and even farm in the rural areas that they would want to preserve the option to sell their land and to a residential developer at some point. So it's about protecting agricultural and protecting that rural character, but it's also about balancing that with property rights and giving everybody some options. So those are some of the land use recommendations. Again, the update of subdivision regulations are something that we would suggest as kind of low-hanging fruit. Open space requirements. Maybe doing a sliding scale of open space requirements based on lot size or density. Harnett County does this pretty effectively with what they call a compatibility development. And then additional small area plans. So southwest we're doing now, and this is gonna be part of this plan, but then the southeast, which includes Eli, Whitney, and Saxapahaw, and that would be a kind of a priority, and look at elsewhere after that. And this is kind of how that could work. Right now, we're really focused on this southwest area of the snow camp area, and there'll be recommendations in the land development plan, kind of as a sixth chapter for that area. But it's the same conditions apply elsewhere. Southeast would be a high priority. So thinking about how you can get started on that, and then Rock Creek and Belmont would be, and then the northern area would be a priority after that. So I think that overall some of the recommendations we're talking about is specifying the location of certain commercial land uses and limiting the size of commercial outside those areas. Some modest design recommendations, but there wasn't a lot of preference for like really stringent design requirements for commercial. It's more about scale and appropriateness and location. And then high impact uses, targeted areas where those are allowed, performance measures, which is basically the HIDO, maybe some updates to the HIDO, the high impact or heavy industrial development ordinance, and making sure that performance measures are met, and then discouraging some of these uses in other areas, including potentially agricultural areas through a special use permit process or some kind of full-blown zoning or overlay district at some or some of the options that I'll talk about a little bit later. So economic development, partnering with the chamber and the municipalities, supporting downtowns and cities, because that's really where a lot of your property values and commerce and non-residential tax bases is. So their success really benefits the county because you still get tax benefits from what happens in there. And supporting Alamance County Community College and schools, that was something that people thought were really important. Focused business recruitment. You sit along the I-40 corridor, and to your west and to your east, you have a lot of growing areas that have a lot of growth in jobs and in the economic sector, and making sure that Alamance is poised to grow with that, and even maybe even poach some of that, some of those jobs would be good. I think that you have a really good and strong economic base and job base, but really focusing on higher wage jobs and growing sectors in the I-40 corridor is something that we're recommending. Professional, scientific, and technical services, they've been kind of underrepresented in the county based on what all you all have to offer. And then also promoting agricultural natural areas and recreation will be part of kind of the economic development. Parks and recreation, natural resources. There's some recommendations in the document specifically targeted at those things. Subdivision regulations, increasing open space requirements, supporting greenways and trail expansions. And the county park system is exemplary for a county your size, and continuing doing good things there. Jordan Lake Partnership is something that is very much active in the area, and that's a partnership that's looking at protecting lands in the Jordan Lake watershed, particularly lands that are undeveloped, agricultural, or have forest on them that can help protect water quality. So I think there's some shared benefit of working with that partnership, because protected land in those rural areas can certainly help protect that rural character that people cared about. Transportation utilities, there's going to be some recommendations there, limiting utility extension in growth areas, and that's something you all have done, and that's largely kept a lot of the development pressure away, but there still is some. And then modernization of roads, access management, and intersection improvements are going to be important. There's not going to be that many large-scale widenings in the county jurisdiction, other than 54, but making sure that those main roads, primarily two-lane highways, don't get too congested in the out year, and focusing on intersection improvements in order to keep them going will be good. As far as the snow camp area plan, this plan is kind of a plan within a plan. So we have overarching recommendations for the county, and then we really drill down and look at snow camp, and not just this area. Really, it's a whole it's the whole southwestern area. But we kind of looked at this focus area in snow camp is just to get a flavor for what some of the character of the built environment and natural environment is down there. And we really want to identify what makes the community snow camp and really that whole southwest area unique, define that character, and then help establish a set of guidelines focused around managing growth, making sure it's appropriate, and protecting natural resources, the historical significance of the area, agricultural in the area, and then create specific recommendations and implementation strategies for that area. So some of the things we looked at is okay, what do commercial uses look like in the southwestern part of the county? What does residential look like? What does the property ownership look like? And there's some statistics there, but right now you have your average agricultural parcel in this area, not just this frame of snow camp, but the whole southwestern area. The average agricultural parcel size is 40 acres. The average residential parcel size is 5 acres. And again, current regulations, or basic subdivision regulations, allow parcel sizes around a quarter of an acre. So you can see that there's a mismatch between current regulations and then what's on the ground and what people are really passionate about protecting. So and so that's something that we want to kind of address. So some of the big picture recommendations for snow camp is preserve the history of snow camp, encourage the preservation of historic structures and rural views and key natural features, and then also allow only low density residential development in order to reduce conflicts with agriculture. There's a more kind of specific strategy, consider implementing additional regulations to manage growth and high impact uses. So consider some form of zoning in the snow camp area or the county as a whole to preserve agricultural and rural character. And then the specifics of that, we have different implementation options. There's a lot of different ways you can implement zoning. I mean, you all have a kind of a checkerboard of ordinances that are useful and could be modified. And as they are, like I said, the subdivision regulations could be modified. But if you really wanted to kind of implement the land use plan, the 4-district zoning process in the Southwest area would accomplish that. An agricultural area, a rural residential area, commercial mixed use area, and then an industrial area. The industrial area could be used for existing uses, but it also could set up a special use permit process that sets a higher bar for having uses permitted with certain high impact uses. Right now, your HIDO is basically a performance measure. So the property and the proposal has to meet certain certain standards in order to be approved. And there's a couple other things that you could do to make it, to discourage certain high impact uses in certain areas, and that's what this could set up. You could do this just in the Southwest, and then you could use a phased approach to look at different areas of the county, and it can be paired with a small area plans that are suggested to kind of look at different areas of the county and create custom districts to accomplish the goals of the different areas. If you were going to say, well, we don't just want to do this in the Southwest, we want to do it countywide, then we would need at least probably 1 or 2 additional districts. The option B would just be an agricultural zoning district or overlay. So that could be in the Southwest or countywide, and that wouldn't quite accomplish all the goals of the land use plan, but it would do a lot to kind of protect the agriculture, which was really important, and rural character. So that's kind of a synopsis of what's in there. Let me show you just a couple things. I know don't have all the time in the world to go through this, but there is more information on the website. So if somebody's watching, can you see my website screen now, Tanya? I just changed it.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, hold on.
There we go.
So again, that's a kind of a brief overview of the recommendations, but on the website you can see you can go to view draft recommendations, and you'll go here to resources, and then if you go in and go underneath the public meetings, these are all the PDFs that were at the last public meeting and will be at the Monday public meeting. And you can go and you can click on that, and if you click on land use, it comes up here, and you can look at the future land use map and read about the highlights, read about these different character areas. There's a larger map that has road names on it that you can kind of see how it all fits together. And then there's some more detailed recommendations about the development pattern we're trying to encourage, how we recommend improving subdivision design in those transition areas, how to reduce development pressure in rural and agricultural areas, and then some other recommendations we have about promoting agriculture, reducing impacts of high impact development, preserving the character and function of mill villages, and managing growth along highways, what we roll out in the small area plan, and then some more details on what zoning could look like in the snow camp area, and some of the recommendations there. So I encourage anybody that has any questions, go there and look at that. And then in addition, there's a comment form that people can click and submit their feedback on where they live and what they like and what they don't. And hopefully we'll get some good feedback on that over the next month or so as we kind of shop this around. So that's kind of a brief overview of what's in there. Next steps, we have that public meeting. We also have the virtual meeting that I didn't put on here, but it's on the 6th. And we're gonna have a steering committee after that, or actually next week. Oh, there's an online public meeting. The draft plan will be available for view on the 9th. Planning board meeting is on the 15th, and then we move into November. More discussion and potential approval of the plan. So that's kind of an overview of it. And at this point, we kind of jump back and get into more specifics, and I can answer some questions of y'all's.
Okay, y'all, I think everybody is muted right now until you're ready to speak, but we're looking for your feedback at this point. He's giving you a big overview, but ask us some questions and let's see what we can help you with.
I've got a question. This is Gene. Being part in the northern part of the county and under your other recs, transportation and utilities, limit utilities. Now the water and sewer is all done by the cities, and I know they're not coming out here, but when you say utilities, you know, the northern part of the county is an area that needs internet. And when you throw utilities in there, to me, it sounds like you want to limit that growth by not having that type stuff.
I think we can specify that I don't mean internet. I mean water and sewer. That's what this is really, that recommendation is about, is, you know, encouraging if a town wants to extend water and sewer, the county should be okay with it. So there really needs to be additional conversations between the town and the county and understand what are those municipal growth areas. Right now we have them as ETJs. There could be some areas within the that suburban transition area, that yellow area that we identify, that, you know, it could be okay for residential development. And if they extend utilities, then and you all agree to, that's an okay area for annexation, that's fine. But not, you know, there's a limit to that, and not really extend it into the rural residential and agricultural areas, because once you extend water and sewer into agricultural areas, the development pressure is only going to go up. So you got to be really careful about where that stuff goes. Internet, I think that we can make sure that we clarify that, and the internet is there's people that live out there now that want and need the internet, and that's increasingly seen as kind of essential, especially the last year or so. So I think we can be really clear about that.
Yeah, you're talking to one of them. What's the little circle and with the dot out there in the northern part of the county, right in McCray? Because I'm sitting here right now. What was that little circle for on that map right there?
Let's go to a more detailed map here.
I think he's talking about the rural village.
Oh yeah,
Up there, I believe.
Yeah. So so those are called rural centers. So these are areas are comprised. There's already usually there's some, you know, small scale commercial development there, or civic use, or something like that. And that's where, you know, you could have some small scale commercial. But you know, that's, we're not thinking very large scale. I mean, we're not saying, you know, utilities, water and sewer out there. So we're not talking about Walmart or anything like that, but that's an area that's okay for some commercial development.
Okay. I see. My opinion, like I said, I live in the northern part of the county. My opinion, if you're going to do something for the southern part of the county, wouldn't it be easier just to do it for the entire county?
Yeah, and that's an option. I don't know if you know whether it's easy or not. You know, it kind of depends how you look at it. Uh, and then, like we said, there's a lot of options. If we wanted to kind of go to some basic zoning in the county, you know, you could do it, you know, just in the Southwest, and you would only need to write, you know, potentially 4 districts. You have to go out and understand what kinds of uses are out there right now, what uses go into what districts, what are considered non-conforming, and all that is a pretty intense process, because I mean, you have to deal with literally hundreds of properties, thousands of properties. So, you know, doing it on a small scale, it is going to be a little easier in the short term. But, you know, I also understand the comment, and if you're going to go through the process, you know, doing it somewhere else that has a similar situation and a similar desire for that, I can understand the desire for that too. So I think there's more discussion on how, you know, these recommendations get implemented, and you know, we might not specify, you know, this is the only way we can skin the cat in the plan. We might just say these are options. There's more discussion at the planning board and board of commissioners that are needed to make the decision on the route that's best for the county.
To see, in my opinion, if I was going to do something in the Southwest County and they had the small area plan, everything would just go to another part of the county. Then you'd have the same problem there. I mean,
No, I mean, that's a valid point, you know. Yeah, and I think that either way, that's why if we recommend the option A and just do the Southwest only, we do have that recommendation about what happens next and how do those other areas of the county get addressed in short order, kind of next.
And I would say, Gene, when we were going through this process of what to do first, land development plan, look at some type of land uses and zoning or something, the board of commissioners voted to go ahead and move forward with the Southwest Snow Camp area, since we were having a lot of development pressure there at the time, and to not ignore the rest of the county, but give an example to go by for the rest of the county, starting with the Southwest.
Yeah.
okay.
Option B is looking a little bit more favorable, because I'm gonna be frankly honest with you, I'm gonna have to agree with Gene, because pretty much it looks like to me that it's kind of sort of like looking in a classroom and saying you can have a pudding cup, but you can't.
Mm-hmm.
This is Alamance County, the whole entire county, you know, and the north side is getting some development pressure as well. We were just discussing the development out on 62 in the north part of the county. We're going to say at best 3 miles from Gene's house, 3 miles from my house. So, you know, it don't need to be in a situation, and I understand what the commissioners are saying. I can appreciate exactly what they're saying, but you know, when you single out a portion of the county and say, okay, we're going to do this for your benefit, and the rest of you will deal with you later, it's kind of sort of like putting a Band-Aid on a butcher knife fight.
Hey, this is Bill Poe. Interject something?
Sure.
All right. So the small area plan for the Southwest, obviously, we all know what that was stemming from. And I think the commissioners and, you know, the voices at that time that were coming to every commissioner meeting was, and they tried to come up with a plan to use it as a guinea pig. I don't think they were wanting to limit the rest of the county to anything. And I think one of the slides here showed like Eli Whitney, Saxonville, Rock Creek, and then a Northern County, like another district. Now, when I first started to advocate for the small area plan, because I kind of fell in love with it initially for, you know, reasons as y'all know, but I wasn't willing to inflict my actual design on maybe a part of the county that really wasn't involved, didn't want to have zoning, because there's a big pushback on zoning overall, on any part of the county. And then there might be some different things. The people in Saxby Hall, they maybe want something a little different than the people over here in Snow Camp. The same way, really, even in Eli Whitney, because believe me, Eli Whitney and Saxby Hall is like night and day. And then northern part of the county, like we're up where y'all live and Amy lives, y'all might want even something different. I don't know, but that's why I think we started initially advocating the small area plan.
Yeah, that's right, Bill. I mean, that's one of the other benefits of taking this small area planning and then implementation approach is you're able to customize the recommendations based on an area's needs. So, what folks need or desire in Snow Camp is it might be different than the northern part of the county. You might could get away with a lot more a simpler set of districts or a different set of districts. Saxby Hall is very different than Snow Camp, right? Or Eli Whitney, or wherever. So I think that would be one of the benefits of that approach. But I mean, there is a third approach there. I mean, there's the option A, which is the Southwest only, and then there's a different option A. Maybe it's like A1 or A2 that is really you do countywide implementation, but you would need at least 2 additional districts to accommodate that, and then option B would just be a more kind of simply cultural zoning district. And it could be a hybrid. You could do agricultural zoning district just to address the biggest concern, and then through the small area plan process, you establish additional land use regulations as needed. So this is not just 2 options. There's probably 3 or 4 if you really start thinking about how this unrolls.
So Jake, if we could go back to the future land use map, this is kind of the picture of all the words of what this plan is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Something, it's obviously a little bit small on the presentation. It's online, a lot easier to see. But this is kind of what the future looks like. I hate to put it that way, but it could be, this map, of course, can be modified at any time. But this is kind of a morph between that agricultural preservation, which we got a lot of feedback on, and then mix a little bit with that transition growth so that we do kind of can have some growth pushing towards the cities and not overwhelm our more rural parts of the county. But keep, you've got your little stores and your small commercial pods in the county, and we don't want to create them as completely non-conforming. We'd rather have them stay what they are and similar things around them, and then commercial go away and go into the larger residential for the county rural areas.
So even without that's the other thing is this is meant to be kind of the land use policy of the county, and how you implement it. There's a number of different ways. So it could be you update subdivision regulations, and that affects the whole county. You could do an overlay in the agricultural area that's countywide, and then you could have more specifics for 1 or more areas as well. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but in general, we're trying to kind of clarify the type of development we want to see in different places and what we'd rather not see in different places. That's what we're trying to do.
But didn't you say at the beginning of this that this was not an ordinance, not zoning? So you could say you're going to make the whole Snow Camp area agriculture, and somebody could still come in and build whatever they wanted to, correct?
Without any changes to existing ordinance, then this is county policy, and it's not it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be followed, right? The best way to implement this is through additional land use regulations, adjustments to ordinances, or new regulations.
I mean, I think it's a pretty good idea myself. I think you're going the perfect way, my opinion, you know.
And I think that there's, you know, even on the implementation side of things, even when we, you know, adopt this plan, there's a lot of details that would need to get worked out. You know, what does, you know, this agricultural zoning district allow? What does it kind of allow with conditions or with standards? And then what does it not allow? And you would be required to have a different, you know, get a different rezoning to a different use. So that's kind of the things that, you know, we're going to provide a roadmap in this plan that has some recommendations, you know, related to, you know, okay, what would this agricultural district look like? What would the rural residential district? What would this commercial district? And if you kind of look at the public meeting boards, you know, there's a call out on, you know, potential zoning districts. So we start to talk about that and what that could look like. But there's a lot of flexibility here. And you know, what is the minimum lot size we're talking about in the agricultural area? What does this rural cluster option look like? You know, what is their gross density maximum? Is there, you know, what kinds of uses are allowed in the rural center versus when you're required to go to industrial zoning? So there's a lot of details that need to get worked out, and staff can help with that. And then you all, you know, have a role to play as well, kind of talking through it. Because even if we adopt the land development plan in November, that really, it sets a direction. But there's a lot more steps and a lot more details that need to get figured out. And that has to come before you all and the Board of Commissioners before it gets enacted into any type of ordinance.
This is Vaughn. I have a couple of questions. One, the agricultural overlay district, if we were to do that over the entire county and still do the small area plan for Snow Camp, would that give us more control, especially in the agricultural areas, about subdivisions? And the other part of this is, right now, this planning board has no control over a subdivision until, well, we just don't. We have zero. And that's a concern, that we're not really a planning board in that sense. We're not planning where anything goes. We're just reacting to things when they happen, which is kind of late. So
Yeah, no, that's right. You know, so that there's two different points there. You know, your initial point, can we do the ag overlay and then do districts and Snow Camp and follow in the small area plan? That's another option, to where you get some protection in agricultural areas countywide, and then there's more detail in Snow Camp, and then that's going to leave kind of some white space, some areas that are unzoned for a while, and you know, that's what the small area plan can do, is they can look at those areas and provide some more detail on what happens there in the future. That's certainly another option. That would be one of those, you know, option C or D that you can look into. And that's, you know, the partial zoning is something a lot of counties that have started zoning do, because, you know, going from 0 to full countywide zoning is a lot in terms of just staff. Just, you know, asking that much from staff is a lot. So phasing it in is something that, just from a implementation standpoint and staff capacity standpoint, makes sense sometimes. I mean, Chatham County, look at Chatham County. They had zoning in the eastern part of the county, the northeastern part of the county, for a number of years, and then, you know, a couple of years ago they extended zoning to the western part and the more rural part of the county. So that's something that there's precedent there, and a lot of other counties have done something similar. You know, related to your question about subdivisions, you know, you really don't have a lot of control right now. You have subdivision regulations. If somebody comes in the door and they meet the regulations, and then they're good to go. Setting a a baseline that says, okay, if you have to meet these higher standards, or you have to get a rezoning to this higher density district, and we have to approve that, is also one way. So getting back to your initial idea of ag overlay, and then the snow camp area, there's probably something else that you could do that's some type of hybrid that maybe it's in all the county, not in the Southwest. You could do an ag district in another district, like a residential district, or something like that, to acknowledge where residential is okay, and then you would have to get approval to go to the residential district if they're in the ag district or something like that. So there's some ways that we could think through. If that's a big concern, we can talk through how to accommodate that.
Well, that was my thinking, was that the ag district overlay would give, I guess if it's done the right way, or if it's allowed to be done, would give this board more control over subdivision planning. As it is now, we have zero. And that was, I don't know if that's the way an agricultural district overlay works. In other words, it's overlay, it's agricultural until you want to do something else in there. And then somebody's got to approve that. Is that in layman's terms what we're talking about?
Well, there's what you could do is if you're going through the process of establishing zoning districts, then you could decide what you want to do with the remainder of the county. So if we want to do the 4 districts for the small area plan and snow camp, you'll have kind of those 4 districts to essentially to utilize. So you could zone everything else, or ag, and then rural residential. And if they want to go to something more intense, like a suburban district, then you could have that district available, but it's only for new uses that people would have to go in for a rezoning. That's one method of setting it up to where they have to ask for a rezoning from you all and the Board of Commissioners.
And you keep mentioning the word zoning. Can Alamance County legally zone without having to go get an approval from Raleigh?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that special legislation that was set up just for us, but legal has looked at it, and we do have the authority to establish that zoning. Originally, some of the discussion was based on townships and voting districts and things like that. And that was all looked at by legal when we started all these discussions, that we have the ability. It's just different than what some of the other counties are, but very much so able to do what we need to do or what we want to do.
Okay.
This information that's on the screen here now, is that your presentation, or is that on the internet, on the website? Or
This is on the internet.
how do we access that?
So let me share my other window here. Sorry, I gotta share like each individual window, but you go to alamancecountyplan.com. And then you just click on view draft recommendations right over here, or you can go to, get involved or resources, but view draft recommendations. And then that one is the land use board right there. So that just goes as land use, and then you can kind of scroll down and see.
On that screen, I don't see the view draft recommendation.
It's right there on the right side.
Excuse me.
Or you can click more on resources and get to it that way, or you can click the get involved and go down to the land use. There's a lot of different ways. It's on like 3 different pages.
I'm on the, okay, I'll find it. It's on the planning department's page site.
So it is on the planning's website. We have a link to this website, but you have to go under what's new and go under land development plan update and then click this. But if you just type in alamanccountyplan.com, it'll take you straight to this page. You don't have to go through our page.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm hearing is, maybe we might want to think through, what a third option is, that sets up some type of framework for the county as a whole and gives the planning board and board some type of control over approving major developments, major subdivisions, and whether it's an ag zoning district in the ag areas, and then some kind of placeholder district or residential district that could be used or petition for rezoning for bigger developments. That's kind of what I'm hearing. And, I think that's fine. I'd rather, add another option and think through it and be able to present that in the plan, so that you all can have kind of more discussion about it. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Y'all are an easy crowd here.
I think they're still absorbing their sponges tonight. They get to absorb everything we're saying and replay. When y'all, this whole meeting is going to be out on YouTube. It's linked on the county's website under the planning board agendas. Those are things, something you thought you heard us say, but you weren't sure. You can always go back and play it. It'll be out there. That's the benefit of all this virtual world, I guess. And of course, the website has all this information. If you want something specific, we can send that to y'all. If there's something additional you would like for information basis for the plan, we just want to make sure that we have a diverse group for planning board, and we make sure that everybody is good with the plan and feel like we're going in the right direction. We haven't missed something. This third option of possible zoning, that's a great idea of mix, match, and make it fit Alamance County, not just kind of an idea of what might have worked somewhere else, but that may actually be the best fit for us. But we'll get some feedback on that and see what happens.
This is Bill Poe, may I interject?
Mm-hmm.
May I say something?
Sure.
I have a question about now these zoning for the small area plan of Snow Camp, for example, or say it was in Rock Creek or whatever, and you had these 4 zones.
Mm-hmm.
This plan at this point doesn't actually design those zones and the location of those zones. Who would determine that at some point?
Yeah, so that process, what it would look like is, we'll have, the future land use map, which is kind of big picture, where we're thinking things go, and there is some kind of relationship between zoning, the zoning districts that you would create in that map, but the plan itself does not enact zoning, and it doesn't craft the districts. This plan just outlines what those districts could look like, and where roughly they could go. That would be a separate process that would kick off, sometime, this winter, and crafting those districts, the details of those districts, and then also applying them to individual properties and different areas of the county that you all choose to enact this. That would be a separate process, and there would be a separate technical process that staff might have to hire a consultant to help with that. And then also it will come before you again in the form of an ordinance. And you will have a chance to help adjust that. And it would have to be approved by the board. It would also have to have probably some additional public involvement, at least, some public hearings, if not more public involvement in order to make sure that, the details are kind of in line with what folks are wanting to see.
So in addition to what Jake was saying, zoning is a very specific process of how all jurisdictions in North Carolina are allowed to implement zoning. That's something we lean heavily on our legal department for things like that, and make sure the procedures are done correctly according to state law. That would be the process we'd have to go through. There's certain notices every single property owner in the county or whoever's getting zoning have to get. They have a right to come before and ask for something different than what they're getting. It's a much more cumbersome process than the land development plan process, but it is laid out for us. There's no guessing. We know exactly what we have to do because state law tells us. Well,
Okay.
Ray, that is the end of our presentation. I don't know if anybody else has any additional questions.
Is everybody pretty much satisfied?
If you have additional questions, just get with Tanya, and she has my email. Actually, I got my email at the end of this thing. So feel free to ask Tanya or myself. I know this is a lot of information. This is kind of the first time you're seeing a lot of this. So we definitely want to have an open dialogue over the next 2 months to kind of talk through this stuff. And like I said, it's not the end of it. There's a lot more discussion even after we approve this plan. But some of these big ideas we want to get in front of you and just have you start thinking about it.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
You're welcome. We felt like y'all needed some information. We're far enough along where y'all needed a little glimpse at what was going on so y'all could speak somewhat responsibly. If someone asks you questions, you have an idea as a planning board what's going on with this plan.
It's very good information, and it's a lot of work there, and still we've got a lot to do here as well. But thank you so much for what you've done.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
So for the record, Gene made the motion and
Oh, I'm sorry,
Bill
Gene.
seconded it.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank y'all so much.
Thank
Have
you, Jake.
yourself a great evening.
Thanks
Thank you.
all. Good night.
See y'all.
Goodbye.